Hey y'all, so we're going to do another little cooking demo tonight. I happened to look up while I was doing some shopping, came across a plethora of mushrooms. Now, normally when I get a big supply of mushrooms, what I like to do is dehydrate them. And I can do that one of two ways, either with a standard dehydrator, or if you don't have a dehydrator, put them in the oven on either the warm or the lowest setting, usually about 175, somewhere in there. Leave the door cracked, let it run for about 10 to 12 hours to dry them out. Once they're dehydrated, put them in a nice, airtight container. They'll hold for several weeks, and when you get ready to use them, just rehydrate them in any water or stock, which is what I did here. I have my rehydrated mushrooms with the stock that I rehydrated them in. Now, I will say this, if you ever use store-bought dried mushrooms, when you rehydrate them, always strain your stock because they tend to have a little bit of grit left. But I always make sure mine are clean before I dehydrate them, so I don't have to worry about that step here. So since I had such a plethora of mushrooms and everything ready to go, I decided to make mushroom risotto tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our lovely garlic oil. You'll remember that from when we did our fish and chips. Get some oil in our pan. Yes, it's a hot pan. Go ahead and get some onions working off. A little warm. We don't want these to fry, we just want them to sweat. Just start getting a little bit translucent. Yeah, that is definitely a touch hot. Let's adjust that down a hair for right this second because we don't want it to completely fry. Alright. Now, mix those around a little bit, and yeah, it looks like I've got a lot of oil in the pan. Believe it or not, I'm actually going to add more oil to that. See, normally when you encounter rice, you encounter two different kinds. You encounter a short grain or a long grain. Long grain rice is a pretty standard and straightforward cooking method. It's 1 part rice to 2 parts liquid. You bring the liquid to a boil, add the rice in, stir it, put a lid on it, let it simmer for 20 minutes, and then fluff it with a fork. It's done. It's simple, it's basic, it's easy. It's also easy to burn, but that's beside the point. It takes a little bit of practice. Risotto, on the other hand, is a completely different animal because this is not a long grain rice. This is a medium to short grain rice. Normally, it's called a borio rice, is what you'll find it listed as in the store, or you'll see it listed as risotto rice. It does not use the same ratio as regular rice, 1 part rice to 2 parts water. This uses 1 part rice to 3 parts liquid. And whereas normally you do use water with regular rice, with risotto, you use stock, and you use warm stock. In this case, you can see I have the stock. It's nice and steaming, so it is ready to go. The thing about risotto is it is actually a little bit more labor intensive. Now, as you can see, I've got some translucence starting here and a little bit of burning on the edges. So, all right. Next step we're going to do is we're going to add in more fat. 2 pats of butter. Now, the reason we're adding in this butter is for one reason. We want more fat in the pan because our next step is actually to add the rice and toast it. Kind of like you're making a pilaf or anything like that. We want the rice to start getting a little bit browned and tanned through as well. Translucent is the word of the day. All right. And we can see that working off pretty well. Got a nice little bit there. And I am also going to go ahead and add these rehydrated mushrooms in so they can start cooking with the rice. And put our ladle back in our stock there. All right. Anytime you can add color, sauteing, anything like that, that adds extra flavor. It's because of the Maillard reaction, and no, that's not the name of the duck. It's named after the scientist. Pull it up on Google, you'll be able to find all sorts of introductions about it. Alton Brown has some of the best introductions and explanations of it that I've found. Piece is a little big there. Break those up just a touch. But yeah, you can see those mushrooms rehydrated well. Good to go. All right. And we're going to start this off. Now that we're starting to get some translucence here, we're going to add a little bit of white wine. Adds a little depth of flavor, helps bring out some of the acids. Now, the one thing about risotto that it's considered a higher class dish is simply because of the amount of effort that goes into it. Because unlike regular rice, which you can pretty much get going and walk away from, you can't walk away from risotto. It has to cook the whole time. And it has to stir the whole time. Now, also, after I rehydrated the mushrooms, I actually kept a few out that we're going to use for garnish later. Yeah, starting to get a little bit of attraction to the bottom of the pan. Seeing some translucence in the rice. The mushrooms are getting nice and shiny. All right, time to start adding the stock. And the stock, you don't just dump in. You add a little bit at a time. You do a couple of ladles. You stir. You'll see when the rice tightens up. Add a little more stock. There we go. All right, now you want to cook this down till most of the liquid is gone. You'll start seeing the rice plump up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to sit here and make you watch the camera while I sit here and stir this for the next 5 minutes, so I'll be right back, folks. Alright, so we've had a few minutes go by, and we can see the stock has gotten really absorbed well because we can pull everything back and we can actually see the bottom of the pan. So we know there's no loose liquid in there. So now, more stock. Now, depending on who and how you're making this for is the stock you can use. Normally when making risotto, you use either a vegetable stock for just a straight vegetarian risotto. You would also use it in this case for a mushroom risotto if you were making it for a vegetarian. However, with the mushrooms, you can also use beef stock because they already have a beefy flavor to them. And that's what I did in this case, is I used beef stock to rehydrate the mushrooms to make a nice beefy mushroom stock. Now, you may not end up needing all the stock that's in the pan. I don't know if I'm going to yet or not. If I don't, whatever's left, I'll simply reduce down into a nice little, what they call demi-glace or demi-glaze, a nice little thickened booster. If you're cooking any sort of like solid meat in a pan, steak, pork chop, anything like that, if you have a touch of wine, some of the demi-glace, and some butter, you can make a pan sauce to go over that pork chop or that steak or whatever that meat is you're cooking. Even chicken stock with a white wine and some butter that's been reduced down. Oh, you can make a pan sauce that'll make you think you're in a Michelin restaurant. See, folks, good cooking is not hard. A few basic tools, a few basic ideas. You know, I can sit there and tell you the recipes for this and that, but like I was talking about earlier with the rice, it's a ratio. It's 1 part rice to 2 parts water. You can use a cup of rice, 2 cups of water. You can use a pound of rice, 2 pounds of water. It works out whichever way. As long as you're using that 1 to 2 ratio, it'll work out right. And like in this case, like I said, I'm using 2 cups of rice, so I had 6 cups of stock. Alright, so I'm going to continue stirring this for a couple of moments. Adding one more ladle here real quick. And I will be back in just a moment. We're going to show you how this is going to get finished off this evening. So I'll be right back, folks. Also, we're getting into the home stretch here. As you can see, the rice has really bubbled up. And we are down to the last little bit of stock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this in there. I'll set that back on the back and I'll get to it in a minute. Let the rest of this work in. Now, if you'll notice, you can see the hunks of mushrooms, but you can also still see the individual grains of rice. Right now we've still got liquid, but you can tell it has started thickening up. Once we finish this up, you'll see how thick it's going to be. So I'm going to do this final little stir, and I'll be right back to show you how to finish this off. Alright, folks, we are in the home stretch now. As you can see, it has thickened up nicely. Got a nice good consistency. But now you want to start doing the other part of the cooking process, which is tasting. So let's see how we look here. Rice is still firm, but not hard. It's got a good mouthfeel to it, but it's flat. So you always want to finish with your seasoning and taste before you season. In this case, I got some of my pre-mixed spice mix. Just a basic blend of pepper, garlic, and onion. And I'm going to go ahead and kill the heat on that. Let residual heat carry it through. Alright, let's taste again. That helped a little bit, but it still needs some salt. And I'm a big fan of kosher salt, so. Alright. Now, a good risotto, unless it's a vegan risotto, you always want to finish off Parmesan cheese. That's why I didn't add that much salt, just a little bit. It was roughly about half a teaspoon. Because that Parmesan is also going to bring some saltiness to the table. Alright. Oh yeah. One more thing though. Mount with just a little more butter. Help give that nice, luscious mouthfeel. Alright, see how nicely that's came together? That is a beautiful mushroom risotto. Now, got my bowl here ready to go. A little bit of garnish, just to make it look pretty. And there you have it. We have a lovely mushroom risotto ready for dinner. And we have leftover mushroom risotto that I'll be eating on throughout the week with some pork chops, some grilled chicken. I even have some shrimp in the freezer I need to work out. So I'll break that up. That'll be dinner a couple of nights during this week. But this is a Landel. That is a lovely mushroom risotto. It's time for me to eat. Y'all have a good one.